The Transfer Student, Part 4. Over the next few weeks, Haruto and James grow closer. They spend more and more time together, studying in the library or hanging out on the rooftop during lunch breaks. Despite his initial reluctance, Haruto finds himself looking forward to these moments with James. The transfer student's easygoing nature and lack of expectations make it easier for Haruto to relax and be himself. As the days turn into weeks, Haruto and James become inseparable. Their friendship deepens, and Haruto finds himself opening up to James in ways he never has with anyone else. On a particularly sunny day, as they sit on the rooftop during lunch, Haruto turns to James with a serious expression. "You know, I've been thinking," he begins quietly. James looks at Haruto with a curious expression. "Oh God, I know that look. It's serious, Haruto. I should get out of here before I get another earful about how great he is." James responds with mock terror as he starts to get up and leave. Haruto playfully grabs James' arms and pulls him back to the bench. He traps him by putting his hands firmly on James' shoulder. He, stop it, you idiot. I'm being serious here," Haruto says with clear amusement in his voice. He. All right, I give. No escape for me," James answers, with equal amusement. Haruto releases James and sits back on the bench beside him. He takes a deep breath, his gray eyes serious as he meets James' gaze. "I want to thank you," he admits quietly, "for seeing me, for being my friend. Despite everything," Haruto speaks, his voice awkward but sincere. "Friend, huh? It's been a long time since I've called someone that," James responds, a hint of reluctance in his voice. Haruto's expression softens, a hint of understanding in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I know the feeling," he admits quietly. He. What are you talking about? You have tons of friends. You have the student council. That vice president of yours seems pretty close to you too. Oh, and you have the several clubs that you're part of," James responds. Haruto's smile fades, a hint of sadness in his gray eyes. He shakes his head slowly, his voice quiet as he speaks again. "No, I don't," he admits. "Those people, they're not friends. They're just people I know or work with. They don't know the real me. Just the student class president or one of the popular kids or the school prince," Haruto says begrudgingly. James' expression softens at Haruto's words. He places a hand on his shoulder and squeezes slightly. "I see. I'm honored then, that you would consider me a friend. A real friend," James says with a smile. Haruto's gaze lingers on James, a hint of warmth and gratitude in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, a small smile returning to his lips. "You're the first one in a while. My first one in high school, actually," he admits quietly. "Your first friend, huh? Then I'm even more honored," James responds. Haruto's smile widens slightly, a hint of genuine happiness in his expression. "Didn't you have friends growing up?" James asks. Haruto leans back on the bench. He closes his eyes, trying to recall his childhood days. "There was Kenji. We met during middle school. We both bonded because we were both half Japanese and grew up in similar households. But as we grew older, he started to resent me," Haruto speaks. His voice steady, though there's hint of sadness. "Resent you? But why?" James asks, cautious not to overstep. Haruto had always been guarded about his past. James knew better than to push too much. Still are actually, really competitive. It started as a friendly rivalry. But as I hit puberty, I grew into my looks while Kenji, he didn't look bad, but people would compare us a lot. It led to him being insecure. And because he couldn't beat me in terms of looks, he went after everything else. My grades, extracurricular activities, sports, popularity, you name it. But it was clear that not everything we competed in was his passion. And he ended up failing in some of them, which led to even more resentment. Haruto continues to explain, his expression getting sadder by the minute. His gaze drifting towards the school grounds below. "Hey, it's not your fault. He clearly had insecurities. It's not your responsibility to make him feel better about himself. And besides, If he was really your friend, he would have supported you regardless of how popular you became. James responds, his voice gentle and reassuring. Haruto's expression lightens. His smile returns as he looks out into the distant buildings. It's nice having someone who understands, he admits quietly. James looks out into the distant buildings, the gentle breeze ruffling his dark brown hair. For a while, he just sits there completely content just being in the moment. You're my first friend too. James finally speaks. There was no sadness in his voice, just a quiet acceptance that his life had been a series of new beginnings and no endings. Haruto's head snaps towards James, a look of surprise and disbelief in his gray eyes. He studies James intently, searching for any hint of deception or a joke. Really? Haruto responds, disbelief in his tone. Yeah, no one has ever come close to being my real friend until you. James responds as his gaze moves to Haruto, a genuine smile on his face. Haruto's expression softens, a hint of wonder and gratitude in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. We're quite the pair, aren't we, James? Indeed we are. The transfer student and Mr. Prince. Haruto's smile widens, a genuine laugh escaping his lips. He shakes his head, a hint of disbelief in his expression. Who would have thought? He muses quietly. Haruto's gaze lingers on James, a hint of warmth and affection in his gray eyes. He reaches out, placing a hand on James's shoulder in a rare display of physical affection. You know? He begins quietly. You know, I'm glad you transferred here. I don't think I've ever felt this comfortable around someone before. Haruto admits softly. I'm glad too. And now that I know I'm not moving anymore, I can finally let myself get comfortable. James responds, his posture relaxing even more. Haruto's expression turns serious, a hint of concern in his gray eyes. His mind goes back to the confrontation with Rina and the rumors that still circulating around the school. He knew all too well what some of the other students were capable of. He squeezes James' shoulder gently, his voice quiet but firm. James, if someone bothers you, or if you feel that your stay here in this school is getting uncomfortable, just let me know, okay? I don't want your last few years of high school to be difficult, especially when you're hanging around with me. James looks at Haruto's hand on his shoulder, then his concerned face. He gives him a reassuring smile. Hey, don't worry about me. I may look soft, but I've got some bite too, you know. Haruto's lips twitch upwards into a small smirk at James' words. He nods slowly, a hint of admiration in his gray eyes. I have no doubt, he admits quietly. But still, just let me know if you need anything, okay? Haruto finishes softly, his gaze lingering on James with a mix of protectiveness and affection. Thanks, I really appreciate it, James says as he looks away. A slight blush on his cheeks and a smile on his face. Haruto's expression softens, a hint of warmth in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, his hand still resting on James' shoulder. It's what friends do, he murmurs quietly. Friends, you're right. It's what friends do, James says in return. Haruto's smile widens, a genuine happiness in his expression. He leans back against the bench, his hand slipping from James' shoulder. So, he begins quietly, what do you want to do now that we're friends? We have some time to kill before class. Let's just hang out for a bit. Chill. Haruto nods slowly, a hint of contentment in his gray eyes. He settles back against the bench, his gaze drifting towards the distant city. Yeah, I can do that. James and Haruto sit in silence for a moment, the wind gently flowing around them. Sun shining through the climbing plants that obscure part of the clear roof, casting shadows and dots of light on them both. James allowed himself to take in the moment. After years trying to find his place, he considered that this might be it. Something about Haruto's presence made him feel at home. So tell me more about yourself, Haruto. James speaks, breaking the silence. Haruto's expression turns thoughtful, a hint of hesitation in his eyes. He pauses for a moment, as if considering his words carefully. What do you want to know? He asks quietly. Did you grow up here? I mean, in this town? Haruto's gaze lingers on James, a hint of sadness in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, his voice quiet as he speaks. Yes, he admits, I've lived here my whole life. Why do you look so sad while saying that? Haruto's expression darkens, a mix of emotions flashing in his gray eyes. He looks away, his jaw clenched tightly. It's complicated. I have good memories in this town, and not so good memories, Haruto murmurs quietly. Sensing the discomfort in his voice, James decides not to push further. I see. I won't question that. Still, it must be nice to have your roots planted somewhere. Having a normal childhood. Haruto's jaw clenches a bit at James's words. A normal childhood. My childhood wasn't exactly normal, Haruto says, his voice quiet with a hint of tightness to it. Sensing Haruto's tension, something James was learning to detect, James places a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked, but hey, guess we have something else in common, huh? Haruto's gaze snaps back to James, a hint of surprise and curiosity in his gray eyes. He studies James intently, a mix of emotions playing across his face. You don't have a good childhood either? He asks quietly. James shakes his head. It's not bad per se. Just doesn't exist. Always moving meant having to start over every time. I never grew up in one place. Never had any long-term friendships. Never had a place I could totally call home. Haruto's expression softens, a hint of empathy and understanding in his gray eyes. He nods slowly, his voice quiet as he speaks. That must have been difficult, he admits. Haruto's gaze lingers on James, a hint of warmth and affection in his gray eyes. He reaches out, placing a hand on James' shoulder in a rare display of physical affection. You have a home now, Haruto says with a warm tone, the earlier tension seemingly forgotten. I guess I do. It feels weird, knowing you're not expected to uproot your life again. James responds, his voice lighter now as he acknowledges that he finally has a chance to start somewhere. Haruto's grip on James' shoulder tightens slightly, his thumb brushing gently against the fabric of James' shirt. The afternoon sun catches in the messy black strands of his hair as he leans closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur. It's okay to feel weird about it, he says quietly, his gray eyes searching James' face with an intensity that belies his usual cold demeanor. But I mean it. You're not going anywhere. A small smile tugs at Haruto's lips, rare and genuine. Besides, who would have to talk to on the rooftop if you left? Mrs. Sherry probably thinks him antisocial enough as it is. James smiles at Haruto's words. Is that a threat? Are you officially holding me hostage? James asks playfully. Absolutely. They'll have to pay me $1 million. No, $1 billion for me to release you. Haruto responds in equal glee. The two laugh together, their banter and jokes now flowing together smoothly. Haha, you're right though. I'm here to stay. I guess we were fated to meet each other, James says as his laughter dies down. Haruto's lips curve into a genuine smile at James' words, the kind that reaches his gray eyes and makes them shine with warmth. He lets out a soft chuckle, the sound surprisingly light. Fate? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? He teases gently, though there's no real mockery in his tone. But I won't argue with results. It's better than sitting here alone. The bell in the distance rings loudly, signaling the end of lunch break and the start of afternoon classes. Haruto reluctantly pulls his hand back from James' shoulder, standing up and stretching his arms overhead. Come on, he says, his voice returning to its original tone. We'll be late for class. James follows suit. He gathers his things as he starts walking towards the door. Then he looks at Haruto with a smirk and mischief in his eyes. Race you to class. Loser buys lunch next Monday. Haruto's eyes widen slightly at the sudden challenge, a flicker of genuine excitement crossing his features. A smirk spreads across his face as he takes a step back, preparing to run. You're on, he says, his voice carrying a competitive edge that wasn't there before. But you might regret challenging me. Without another word, Haruto turns and sprints toward the stairwell leading back into the school building. His footsteps echo down the hallway as he moves with surprising speed for someone who usually prefers solitude. James has to hurry to catch up, the sound of their shoes pounding against the linoleum floors mixing with distant classroom chatter. Haruto reaches the classroom door first, panting slightly from the run, but with a triumphant grin plastered across his face. He leans against the doorframe, crossing his arms as James catches up. "Looks like you lost," he says, his gray eyes sparkling with amusement. "So about that lunch." He trails off as Mrs. Sherry walks past them into the classroom, giving them both a knowing look. "You two are going to be late for my lecture if you don't get inside," she calls over her shoulder before taking her place at the front of the room. Haruto pushes off from the doorway and gestures for James to follow him to their seat. "I demand a rematch. You totally had a head start," James says in a near whisper as he's still catching his breath. Haruto settles into his seat, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he pulls out his notebook. He leans back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. "A rematch?" he repeats, his voice low enough that only James can hear it over Mrs. Sherry's lecture. "You really think you can beat me?" His gray eyes flick up to meet James, a challenge dancing in their depths. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the classroom window catches his black hair just right, making him look more like an artist's model than a high school student, all of which James notices as he gives Haruto the side eye. "Fine," Haruto concedes after a moment, his smirk widening into something more genuine. "Next week, Monday, homeroom, same stakes." Mrs. Sherry clears her throat pointedly from the front of the classroom, her sharp gaze landing on their corner of the room where James and Haruto sat. "Haruto." "James, something more important than today's lesson on trigonomic equations?" she asks with a raised eyebrow, though there's some amusement in her voice. Haruto straightens up in his seat immediately, his posture becoming more respectful. "No. Sorry, Mrs. Sherry. We were just discussing our morning routine." "Sorry, Mrs. Sherry. We'll pay more attention to your lecture," James added as he also straightens up. The teacher nods slowly before continuing her lecture. Haruto's attention shifts back to James for a brief moment, a silent promise passing between them. As the final bell rings signaling end of classes, Haruto and James pack up their things. "I guess I'll see you next week then. I can't wait for our rematch," James says with a playful tone. "Any plans for the weekend, Haruto?" he continues as he puts on his backpack. Haruto pauses with his backpack slung over one shoulder, his gray eyes meeting James with a hint of something unreadable. "My brothers probably need help with their homework," he explains briefly, though there's an edge of seriousness in his voice that wasn't there before. "Your brothers? You mean you help them with their homework during the weekend? Wow. That's really nice of you," James responds with genuine adoration in his voice. He starts walking with Haruto toward the classroom door. "Thanks, actually. I say he's been having trouble with math lately. I should probably check in on him more often." The mention of his younger brother seems to make Haruto's usual cold demeanor crack, just enough to reveal something protective underneath. James smiles, hearing the genuine concern and protectiveness in Haruto's words. He thought about how lucky Haruto's two brothers are to have such a caring older brother. "Hey, you want my help?" "With tutoring your brothers?" James asks, clear enthusiasm in his voice. Haruto's gray eyes widen slightly at James' offer, surprise flickering across his features before being replaced by something softer. He hesitates for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the proposition. "Huh? You'd do that? But why?" he asks quietly, his voice losing its usual edge of indifference. Haruto's question catches James off guard. His enthusiasm falters slightly as he realizes as he may have been too eager to help. Well, I honestly have nothing better to do. I usually just go home to my dad's apartment. Watch TV the whole weekend," James explains, a hint of sadness in his voice though he masks it as indifference. Despite James' attempt to mask his tone, Haruto notices how the change in James's demeanor. He was so enthusiastic about helping with his brothers, and now he looked less happy talking about going home. "Let me get this straight. You would rather go to my place of chaos and destruction than to your quiet room?" Haruto speaks sarcastically. "Yeah, I mean," James begins to explain, but he catches himself again, not wanting to look too eager. "Look, I don't have siblings. I don't know what it's like to have brothers. So, yeah, I'd be happy to help you with tutoring your brothers, if anything, just to see what it's like to have them. James continues, his tone slightly insistent. You want to see what it's like? You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, Haruto responds, his voice a bit lighter now. Haruto doesn't move away from the doorway. His posture shifts, almost imperceptibly, as if he's considering the offer more seriously than he lets on. Asahi's in second grade, he adds after a pause. His math problems are pretty basic, but he gets frustrated easily. To have brothers, Haruto states, more to himself rather than James. He lets out a short laugh, shaking his head slightly. You have no idea what you're getting into. Haruto adds, his tone now replaced with amusement. Haruto finally steps out of the classroom, James falling into step beside him. If you're serious about this, he says with a hint of amusement in his voice, then you better be prepared for chaos. Just then, Mrs. Sherry steps outside the classroom behind them. She calls out for them before walking towards them in the hallway with a knowing smile. Her arms crossed as she looks between them. Haruto and James stop mid-step before turning around to face Mrs. Sherry. Haruto, I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with James lately, she says in her warm but firm tone. It's good to see you making connections outside of your usual circle. She turns to James with an encouraging expression. And James, it's wonderful that you're finding your place here at Indigo High. The teacher's praise seems to make Haruto shift uncomfortably, though he doesn't argue with her assessment. Mrs. Sherry, he begins hesitantly. James was actually just offering to help me with tutoring my brothers. Mrs. Sherry's expression brightens with genuine approval, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Wonderful. That's exactly what I like to see, she says warmly. Community involvement and academic support. She pats Haruto lightly on the shoulder. I'm sure your mother will be delighted by James' offer. Well, I'll be off now. Have a wonderful weekend, you two. The teacher starts moving in the opposite direction, leaving Haruto and James in the middle of the hallway. James can't help but smile at Haruto, seeing that even a teacher approved of his offer to help with this brothers. Haruto lets out a slow breath, running a hand through his messy black hair. You're really gonna do this? Haruto asks quietly. Hee hee. Well, I have no choice now that Mrs. Sherry is a witness to my generosity, James responds, his tone playful and teasing at the same time. Haruto's lips twitch into a smirk at James's teasing. He shakes his head, grabbing the straps of his backpack more as they both make their way to the school exit. So, tell me more about your brothers. What are they like? After all, I should know what I'm getting myself into. James speaks while walking beside Haruto. His tone carries a barely contained excitement at meeting Haruto's siblings. Haruto, though, thinks for a moment before speaking. Hiroki is the middle child. He's smart for his age. He understands things better than kids his age. He can be a bit closed off sometimes, but when he gets close to someone, he starts acting like a kid again. Asahi, on the other hand, is like a walking tornado. He has trouble focusing on things and tends to run around a lot. When both of them are together, you can almost always expect a mess to appear. James notices the smile on Haruto's face as he describes his brothers. He can't help but smile in return. Looks like they got some of your traits. Tell me, are they going to bully me too? Or is that just a you thing? James responds with a teasing tone. Bully you? No, he says with a dry laugh. Asahi probably won't even realize you're there until he tries to climb onto your shoulders like a jungle gym. He'll probably circle you multiple times trying to memorize every detail. As they finally reach the bus stop, Haruto glances at James, with a hint of something vulnerable in his gray eyes. The problem is Hiroki, Haruto admits quietly. He's been asking about you, wants to know why I'm spending time with someone new. Me? You talk about me? To your brothers? I may have mentioned you here and there during dinner. I told them about how you're the new transfer student, and how we've been hanging out after class. James' face softens, the smile on his face getting even wider. The afternoon sunlight catches Haruto's profile as he finally stops in front of the bus stop, his expression thoughtful. My brothers are everything to me, Haruto continues quietly, his voice carrying a rare note of vulnerability. Asahi's energy is exhausting, but he means well. Hiroki is different. He faces James fully, leaning against the bus stop with his arms crossed. Hiroki's quiet, observant. He notices things other people don't. Haruto explains, his gray eyes taking on a distant look. If you're coming over, he'll be watching every move you make. He might even try to test you. Haruto adds with a small smirk returning to his face. James steps in front of Haruto. He places his hand gently on his arm. A reassuring gesture that Haruto was familiar with now. I can tell you really love your brothers. Thank you for trusting me enough to introduce me to them. I promise to be as patient as I need to be with them. James speaks. His voice is gentle as his hand on Haruto's arm. Haruto's expression softens completely at James' words, his usual cold demeanor melting away to reveal something much warmer beneath. The tension in his shoulders eases as he nods slowly. I know you'll be patient with them, he admits quietly. But they're my responsibility, so if things become too much for you, just let me know and I'll get you out. He pushes off from the bus stop as the bus finally pulls in. He boards the bus checking to see if James was still following. The afternoon sunlight casts long shadows across the bus's interior. Haruto and James take a seat side by side with James taking the window seat. Our apartment complex isn't far from here, Haruto says as he stares out the bus window. It's nothing fancy, just a standard 3-bedroom. Though, the neighborhood could use a lot of improvement. Haruto continues, his voice getting softer, almost as if he was hiding something uncomfortable. James looks at Haruto with confusion. He had assumed that Haruto, like the rest of the school, came from a rich family. Then he remembered Haruto mentioning his scholarships being the motivation for maintaining his straight A's. And then he remembered the times when Haruto would bring his own lunch instead of buying food from the cafeteria like everyone else. His food had always looked appetizing, like they were prepared with love. But looking back, James realized they were made with simple ingredients. As James was connecting the dots in his head, the bus turns into a street he was not familiar with. He looks out the window to see abandoned apartment buildings. The sidewalks were not maintained well, with the concrete cracking and the plants overgrowing from the planters. There were some graffiti spray painted on some of the abandoned buildings, and there were hardly any people out in the street. Haruto glances sideways at James, his gray eyes catching the confusion in James' face. It's not what you were expecting, huh? Haruto speaks, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. I can explain. He continues, his voice smaller now than it has ever been. He looks down at his hands, which were clasped together. James turns his head to look at Haruto. The expression on Haruto's face was unreadable. Like he wanted to disappear, but also trying so hard to still look like the strong prince of Indigo High. James immediately puts a hand on Haruto's shoulder, the contact causing Haruto to flinch. You don't have to, James speaks, his voice kind and understanding. We're heading to your house, right? Then you're going to introduce me to your brothers. And I'm going to do my best to help you tutor them. James continues, a genuine smile on his face. Haruto looks at James' hand on his shoulder, and then at his face. The smile seems to soften something inside of him as the tension leaves his body. His expression lightens. He gives James a nod. A small smile forming on his face. Thanks. The bus continues on for a few more minutes before finally pulling over to the next bus stop. Haruto exits the bus with James right behind him. They walk to an apartment building that has seen better days. But the lights inside indicate that there were several inhabitants. My mom works the whole day as a nurse in the hospital, sometimes double shifts. She'll be home later tonight, probably with groceries. Haruto explains as he walks to the building entrance. She sounds like a wonderful mother. She works so hard to provide for you and your brothers. I can already tell how much she loves you, James responds. His voice kind and full of adoration. But underneath there was something, a sadness that he so desperately tries to hide. Haruto's steps falter for a moment, his hand freezing on the apartment elevator button. He glances back at James, something deeper flickering in his gray eyes. She is, he says quietly, his voice carrying more emotion than usual. She's the only reason my brothers and I are still together. James smiles at Haruto's statement. The love he had for his mother was clear even in the few words he said about her. They continue up the elevator to the 4th floor. Haruto leads James to the 3rd door down the hallway. He unlocks the door and pushes it open, revealing a small but tidy entryway with shoes lined up neatly on a mat. The faint sound of children's voices carries from deeper inside the apartment. "You ready for this?" "This is the point of no return," Haruto teases, his voice now lighter. James gives a curt nod. Haruto, the school's prince who had now become his friend, had graciously allowed him into his home to meet his family. James takes a deep breath as he takes his first step inside. Little did he know that by entering Haruto's home, he had unexpectedly entered into a new chapter of his life. To be continued. Stay tuned for the next part. If you like this story, please like and subscribe.